So now we're gonna start working on our new site again. I'm going to set that up. I'm just gonna go into my directory real quick. So today we're gonna be using Axios with our project. So if you don't have it installed already, you probably don't because we haven't really used it yet. We're just gonna do npm install Axios, just so we can use it today in our project. Okay, so seems like everything was fine. I'm going to run my server, so npm run dev and check. Okay, so we see our new site that we've been working on. Okay, so we are wanting to call an API. We have the link up. This is the API docs. I'm going to also send it in the chat so you guys can look at it on your own computers. So there's two different APIs. I've mentioned this before. There's the Hacker News built one, and then there's one built by a different company that uses the Hacker News data. I personally prefer this one. It is a little more easier to use. They have a bit more built-in functionalities. For the regular Hacker News API, when you're getting stories and stuff, they send back a list of object IDs, and then you have to loop through that list and then make an API call for every single object that you want or every single story that you want. So if you want to use this, you can use this, but today we're going to use the Algolia one. Okay, so let's look at the docs real quick just to figure out what kind of API requests we want to make. So let's see. This one grabs items. We can specify an item ID. So in the data that we had looked at, I'm going to open up our data to look at it real quick. So our object ID, that's what ID we would put. So let's say I want this one, it should be server emulator in C. So if I should have copied that afterwards. So if I grab this and I replace ID with this ID, I should get some information. Okay, so I got the same information, and it's server emulator in C. So that's the same one that we have in our data. So if you wanted to grab certain items by ID, you can do this way. Let's check out their other ones. Users, let's not care about users right now. We can do some searches. So if we do a regular search, this is their base API. So it's their domain /API/version1. Different APIs will be at different versions. So they'll just tell you like what their base URL is. And so if we want to search, we can just put search, and then we can have a query afterwards. So we'll look at the query examples later. And this is sorted by relevance, then points, then number of comments. If we want it sorted by date, we can grab search by date instead of search. And then whatever parameters extra we want, we don't have to put these extra parameters. So this will give us the most recent stuff. What else? There are tags. So if we want to, there's all these tags that are defined. So if we wanted to add specific tags, we would have them filtered. So tags are ANDed by default. So if you just give them a list of tags, it'll look for everything that has all those tags together. if you want to put them like either this tag or this tag, you put it in parentheses when you send it in. And that's how you can grab that information. By default, limited number of results is returned in each page. So the available, so the number of results and the page number are available as these two variables. So hits per page will return the number of records that is sent over the API. NB pages, that's going to be the number of pages. This is a little confusing because they said it respectively, but they switched them. Okay, so we can just append parameters like this, like page equals 2 or hits per page equals 50. Okay, and then they have some examples here that are written out for us. So we can have all stories matching a certain keyword. So we set query equals to something, comments, URLs, front or home page. Maybe we should do that. Let's grab this for our home page. So if I just test out this API, we'll see we're going to get just a list of data. And I'm going to assume that they're all on the home page because that's what the API is telling me. So I'm going to grab this URL and I'm going to go into my app. Let's see. So here we get all of our articles in our main app component. So here, instead of importing the news data from a file and then making a state out of it, we can just call an API for this. So I'm going to comment this out. And then let's say for use state right now, I'm going to change this up a little bit. So I'm just going to comment this bottom part out. And for use state, I'm just going to send in an empty list. So in the beginning, before we fetch any of the articles, my all articles state is going to be empty. So one very common way that we're going to be using API calls in is through the use effect. So when our page first loads, we will use a use effect to load our data from the API and then put it into our state, and then we can just use it throughout our app. Can someone remind me what the syntax for use effect is, or what should I do first?
You've got to import it if you haven't yet.
Okay, I do not. So I'm going to put it next to the use state here. Use effect. Okay. So what do I do?
And then I believe you type in use effect.
Mm-hmm.
And then that takes parameters, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the first parameter was off the top of my head. Second parameter is a list of the functions of the variables that you want, that you don't want re-rendered, right?
So the list is going to be, if it's an empty list, that means this use effect is going to get called when the component first renders and when it's about to unmount. If there's something in here, that means every time whatever in here gets updated, this use effect will get called. So if I had my all articles here, if there was a different function that changes the all articles, so like it calls set articles and it does something, this will get triggered because the use effect is watching this all articles piece of data and checks if it's going to get updated or not. And if it does, then the use effect will get called. So if we're gonna call this only on our first app reload, what should we have inside of this inside of these angle brackets or sorry, in the square brackets.
We just want it blank, don't we?
Want it what?
We just want it blank, don't we?
Yes, we do. So blank, we'll run it once in the beginning. And then we have a function that is going to be our first parameter. So our use effect takes in a function that gets executed whenever certain criteria gets happen. And then this defines what that criteria is. So if it's an empty list, whatever you define inside of this code block is going to get executed when the component first renders. And if you have a return inside of here, that will get executed when the component unmounts. So right before it gets deleted. If I do have something in here, then the code will get deleted or updated, sorry, or the code inside of this function will run if I have anything in here and that variable updated, or that piece of state or that prop gets updated somewhere else. Okay, so in this use effect, I'm going to just use Axios. So axios.get, I'm going to put my URL in there. So I have my base URL, and then I want to do a search, and my tags is going to equal front page. Let's say I wanted to do, so how can I add another parameter to my URL?
Put a comma after the apostrophe.
A comma?
After the apostrophe
Okay.
or the code.
Mm-hmm. And what do I add here? Do I just start putting stuff there, or?
Are we sending in a header?
We just want to add more. So this one is one parameter. This is tags. If I want to add another one, and I don't, we'll talk about this way in a bit. You can send parameters up here, but you can also just put them inside of the tag here.
Can't you just / and then the backticks, since it's JavaScript and $20
Yeah,
And-
so you can, but I don't have a variable that I would need for that. So Robert in the chat was correct. We're going to put it in. So an and will allow you to put parameters one right after the other. So let's say I wanted the tags to be front page, and I wanted my hits per page. I think I forgot what the baseline or what the default is, but I'm going to set hits per page equal to 50. Let's say I want more information. I'm just checking that this is, I think it's all one word, and this is it's in camel case. Okay. So we do a .get. What do we have to do after this .get to print out the response?
You got to do a dot then,
Mm-hmm.
which takes a function, and you're going to take your response
Mhm.
and return console. So response, and then you're going to do your fat arrow, a function, and return, or sorry, console.log response.
Mhm.
And it's .data.hits.
It's going to be inside of there. Okay, response data hits. I can actually just keep response, and then we'll check it out in the
Okay.
in the console. Awesome. Okay, so right now, whenever we go into our app, our articles, like everything that's using the articles, might be it's not going to show up because we're not actually loading any of our articles right now. But for right now, we're going to find something in our console. So we go here.
Do we need to import Axios?
Yes, we do. I did not do that. Thank you. Which is what the error here is saying. Axios is not defined. That means I did not import it because JavaScript does not know what Axios is by itself. So import Axios from Axios inside of a string. Okay, that should be updated. Awesome. So I see here that I got some information back. Again, it's twice because what?
The strict, what is it?
Strict
The,
mode.
Yeah, strict mode, definitely. Awesome. So we see here, we got some config stuff, which we don't really have to worry about, but here there's our headers and all that stuff, because this is an HTTP response. We have our data, which is probably where we want to end up going into. And then we look at hits per page is 50, but the actual hits that were returned are 37 because they only had 37 on their first page. So this was the number that we had set. If I remove this, if I remove this hits per page and I go back and I look at my data, it says hits per page was originally 20, but I guess it returned 37 again, or unless this is the hits altogether. These are the only ones that exist. Okay, let's see how much information we actually got back. So in hits, we got an array of 20. So because hits per page is a default of 20, that will return only 20 objects. But all in all, we have 37 that we can access. So we can actually go a little higher. So I can go back to hits per page, just keep it at 50 right now. That will guarantee that we're getting all of our objects. So this is our response. We're gonna drill into response.data.hits to get our array of data. So I'm gonna say response.data.hits, and that should just give me the array. Cool. And what do these arrays look like? What does this object look like? So we have tags, we have author, title, we have all the information that we had in our data that we were using. So in this, the static data, the news.json, we have all this information. This is the list that we have access to pretty much. So now what do we have to do? What's the next step?
Got to map that
Mm-hmm.
the same way we did with the other stuff. So we can, instead of console logging the response, we can just say response.data.hits.map. I don't know if we have to assign it to a variable or not. That's something I'm questioning.
You don't have to. If you want to, you can. Sometimes people like it because it's a little more easily readable, but you don't have to at all. So response.data.hits what?
.map.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to take the art. It'll be basically the same thing as we did with news data. So
Yeah. So I'm going to just copy this. So article, and then we wanted to hold on to the index. And then I can just copy from here on. On comment. Okay. So this needs one more parenthesis around it. And okay, this closes here. This one closes there. There we go. I think this is correct. Maybe. Okay. So basically what we're doing is we're grabbing the results that we just got from our API call. We're mapping through them, and then we are returning a list of articles in the format that we wanted to do to have it in. What am I missing here?
we're not returning that, or actually we are, never mind.
So we're returning this. This entire thing is gonna essentially return a list.
Yeah, so we need to set all articles with that.
Exactly. I'm gonna remove this just to see it easily. So set all articles with whatever comes back from here, right? So I'm just going to call this API articles equals this. And then after that is done, let's do that. So cleaner. Okay. So I have my API articles, and then I'm going to say set all articles with that API data.
I think you need a let or a const for the API articles variable.
Thank you. I do. I've been too spoiled with Python. Okay. So const articles context. Okay, so there's something wrong with my probably like I have a lot of opening and closing parentheses. So yeah, this is getting a little too hard to read. So I'm gonna move this Axios call into a separate function. So let's just call it function. All API. And I'm not going to send anything right now, just for simplicity's sake. So what is happening here? It's
You spelled function.
misspelled it, yeah. Okay, cool. And then I grab my call. I'm gonna get a call. And I'm just gonna return whatever this calls. Okay. I think this is fine. We're going to call the API, then we are going to the response. Do you see where the mismatch is happening? So my use effect opened a function, and this is supposed to live inside of that function. Here, I'm going to do this instead so we can see it better. For this is why it's a little difficult to use the .thens, because you end up having to indent so many times. So we could have just made this an async. Forgot I have to put it here. So async function. Inside of my use effect, I'm going to say response equals await all API, and then I can use the response. So why is this console? Never mind. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Let's do this. So the reason why this await didn't work here is because whatever function I use await in has to be an async function. So this async here, I could do await in here. So I can do my Axios call here. So results equals Axios, and then I can say, await Axios. And then I can have pretty much this code be like live in here. I need to fix it. It's not good because I'm using the .then, which I can just remove .then. So this console log is going to happen. And then I'm going to grab my API articles, loop through them, and this returns that. This is here. Just gonna have this all on one line. Okay, and then I'm setting all the articles within the same function. So this async function calls the API, and then sets the articles for me. And then in here, I'm just gonna call the API, and that is it. So now I've fixed my my syntax. Okay. Yeah, when it gets too busy and you don't understand what is happening and there's just errors, try rewriting the code that is very dense. It's gonna be much easier to use. So, okay, we're gonna call our API. Let's see if this actually works. We're gonna print out the data and then grab the API articles in the new format that we have it. And then we're gonna set this article, all article state, to be the API articles that we grabbed. So let's see what errors we get. In promise, assignment to undeclared variable is, I think I removed the let, or no?
You changed it, you made it result equals await instead of, and then you're calling response with everything else.
Thank you. So response, have my auto load, so it should be good. Okay, there's another one.
You need the let for response.
Thank you. I keep forgetting these. Okay, let's response. There we go. Okay, so we see we have new data here. So this is all the data that's coming in from the front page of the actual Hacker News. Let's actually check that to see if they are lying to us. Hacker News. Oh, I have it in another tab. No, come back. So Go framework. Let me see. Okay, it's a little stale, but it's from the 27th. What's the date today? It's the 29th. Okay, so it's a few days late, which is weird. This is saying that it's okay. Oh, new. Or just Hacker News, okay. Anyways. So they gave us data. It doesn't look like the front page is the correct. It's not giving us the correct one because Git notes is coming in first. Okay. So that is how we can grab data. I'm assuming that our article page will still work because we're just doing it relative to the list we have. Yeah, so even if this page refreshes and there's new results, if we click on the article page, it's still grabbing the IDs relative to the list that we have, so it won't really break anything. So another thing that we wanted to do was actually get our tabs to work. So show, we actually have one that already is showing here for show HN, so that's cool. Let's do another API call for that. So where should I go? Actually, anyone have any questions? I moved a little fast.
Yeah, do you mind if we just pause here for just a minute?
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to reiterate anything or just pausing to look at the code?
So if, because you refactored a lot of things and that was all with, so that was originally all within a use effect.
Yes. So
So
this
if you just did that, if you just kept the same use effect
Mhm.
and just returned the API article, or yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it would have worked. So now that I have, let's see. So I can't do the async await thing because I think, actually, let's try it. Because I can't set the use effect to be async. So I'm gonna grab everything inside of my API call function and then see if it works in here. Yeah, so if I use await, I can't use the await in here. I would have to chain them. So I'm gonna have to do the dot then. And then I'm gonna grab the closing parenthesis. Put it at the end of this. So that's what messed me up earlier because we had so many different layers of calls. And here. This is an arrow function. This needs to close over here. Okay, and then this is catching the response from the API call. So I'm just going to call it response. And now everything should work properly. So if I go back to my home page, oh, I don't have a button for home. I need to fix that. Okay, so yeah, it still worked. So the only thing that I did was I put all of this code inside of a function instead. So I made a function called call API. And that called the API. I was able to use async await because I have a separate function that I made it in. Yeah. Did that help? Did it clear it up? No. So what was your question? You were asking like why, like if we just put the code in here, would it work? Would it do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I think there's just too many variables moving around for me to like.
Yeah.
That, so.
Okay, I'm gonna remove this function. So basically our use effect is gonna take in a function and execute whatever's in that function when our component first renders, which is because we put an empty list here. That's why it's gonna do it only on component render, and it's not gonna do it again. If we do this, okay, if we don't add a second parameter, or if we just keep it empty, see what happens. Console. So it's looping. I need to stop it because I'm gonna hit my daily limit. But it basically just keeps looping and calling the API over and over and over. Look how many calls it made. I know this happened because I removed the square brackets, but can someone tell me why removing the square brackets triggered it to run infinitely?
Is it because you're not telling it how many times to render?
No, but good guess.
Is it because you're not giving it any conditions?
That is also a good guess. So if we don't give it any conditions, it is because like both of those are valid. So when we're not giving it anything here, it will run every time anything is updated in the app. So our call here grabs data and then it updates a piece of state. So because of this state update, our component is going to re-render and this use effect is going to get called, which then sets the state again, which then calls it again, and so on. It just keeps going on forever. So when in doubt, just put an empty square brackets until you decide what condition you want. You want to trigger it. Okay, are we good with this part? We can explore setting the sections. Yeah. Questions? Okay. So now we have our baseline articles. But if I go to a section, let's look at our section page. I forgot how it was implemented. We wanted to, okay, so our section page is currently grabbing the tag from the parameter. And then it's grabbing the articles from our context. I forgot we set a context yesterday. So it's grabbing the articles from our this page basically. And then it's calling a function that is filtering this list of articles and only giving us what we want. now that we're working with API calls and we know that there's specific tags that we're looking for, what's an alternative to this? What's an alternative to using the same list and filtering?
We can just make the API call
Mhm.
to that specific article filter, I guess, or section, I think we're using.
Yeah, let's do that. So what should we do? I'm gonna do a use effect just so we can get used to using them. Oh, cool. So it auto completed and it created a scaffold for me. So first it'll do this, second, or I guess first we should do this and second we should do this. I don't know. Ignore all of these. I'm just going to keep it to execute when it first renders. I don't want to do anything with the return, so I'm going to also remove that. Okay. Someone tell me what to do. Shout out.
So we have our sections.json, which is basically all the sections that we have. So I think, I don't know if we need to like iterate through that and basically make the API calls.
So the API call or the section page has access to the section tag that we're going to grab. So pretty much what is happening, we're clicking on this, and then we want to do the API call to display the one specific over here.
Okay, yeah.
So we have access to the section tag, so we don't need to loop through our existing list. So what can we do with it now?
So we're gonna have to put that section tag as like a parameter in the API call.
Definitely. Okay, I'm gonna start an API call. Votes, should we do async await or the .then?
Probably do async await.
Async await. Okay, I got 2 votes versus none, so I'm gonna go with that. So get filtered articles. I don't really need this. Maybe I can make this my call, or I'll just make a new function. It's okay. So I'm going to call this get section articles. And this is just a function. I'm going to make it an async function. So this function is going to use Axios, which I need to import. I just clicked on that, so it imported Axios for me. So Axios.get. And let me look at my API docs real quick. I want something with a tag. So just a tag. Maybe I can do search by date, so I can grab the latest. So yeah, let's do search by date and then we'll set the tags. Let me grab this. So this is my base URL. And so earlier we saw that if you want to put parameters, you can do the question mark, and then put like, let's put page or tag or whatever, you can add them in here. But what I think an easier way is to specify the parameters next to it, which I forgot who was mentioning it earlier before, but this is another way of sending in data. So for this API, it's going to take in, for the parameters, it has params. So it's going to take in an object, and in this object, there is going to be a key called params, and that will also be an object, or can have an object of stuff. So this is our entire object of parameters, and I'm going to specify what parameters I want to set inside of here. So let's say, I'm going to put this on a new line so we can see it better. So let's say inside of these parameters, I want to set the tags, right? so it's tags. I wanted story, not story, sorry. I want my tag to be my section tag, right? Yes, no? Yes, thank you, Sam. Okay, so I'm gonna add this. So these are the tags that I can specify. My first tag I want is going to be definitely the section tag because that's how I'm making my search. So section tag, I need to put these in curly braces, not parentheses. What else? I can add my hits per page. And I can set that to 50. That is it for now. If I wanted to specify any query, because we saw here, like we had a query. Where is it? This one. This will search actual keywords. So maybe when you're implementing your search, you can actually search the entire database for the articles that you want. So the way query works, huh?
Does your hits per page need to be a string or can it take an int?
It can take an integer, yeah.
Okay.
So for query, you can put them, I believe, in a tuple style, so like in parentheses. And then you can put whatever keywords you want. So if you're doing a search and you want to put in certain words that you're looking for, you can just put them in here. So let's say C or something like that, I don't know. Or computer. Okay, so this is how you can specify the parameters. You just create an object with certain keys and values. So for this section articles page, I want just to grab the articles that have this section tag. I'm going to increase the hits per page just so because I want to get more data. And I don't need this one right now. I will comment it out, but it's just for your guys' reference when you play around with the search and stuff like that. Okay, so I have my function. I'm not calling it. I'm also not really doing anything with the data yet. So I'm gonna do let response equals await Axios. Okay, so this will return a promise. My promise is being resolved into the response. And then I can console log my response. It will most likely be in data hits like we saw earlier, but for now we'll just console log. And all that's left to do is for me to call this function. So get selection articles.
A quick question. In the params on line 27, line 29 actually, are you hard coding the hit per page 50?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
what you do. Okay.
Yeah. I can specify whatever number I want here. I'm not sure. I think 50 might be their max. I could do more. But yeah, I specified this. Their default is 20. Okay, so the user factor is going to call this function. We're going to get the API call. So let's see what happens when we go to our app. I'm going to clear this because, oh my God. I messed something up. Hold on. Okay. So that's weird. You saw that, right? So it was still making the API calls, even though I had stopped my server. I think because the code was loaded into the browser and the browser was still running with it, and it didn't really refresh and take the new code. Okay, so now we only have these calls. If I go to ask, we get an error. Use effect is not defined. First, why would it be? Use context. Use effect. Okay. Now if we refresh, oh, we got some data. Okay. This is from our section page. So this is the data that actually is getting, this is the one that we are looking for here. I'm going to go back and just go back to my app and remove this console log so we don't see multiple. Okay. So here, let's see data hits. We have an array of 50, and they all have ask HN in the beginning. Awesome. Let's look at show. Okay. Scroll down. Did it get called here? Data hits. These are ask HN. I think I didn't refresh. Let's see here. Show HN. We're on show HN. Awesome. So we're getting data related to that. Jobs, I didn't specify one, but I think they're, if I look at the tag, they don't have a jobs one. We can look at that one later. But okay, we know that a few of these are working. So let's just actually load the information that we're getting from the API into our list. All right. So we're in our section page. Our articles list is getting our filtered articles, which was the old function. It was just looping through. So let's not use that anymore. What do we want to do instead? Or what can we do? There's a few ways of doing this. So we have our response. It's the same as we did earlier.
Map it.
Map it, yeah. Well, do we need to map it? We're getting a list. Oh, we do need to map it, actually. I forgot, because we did change the way this was. So I'm seeing that I have to do this quite a bit. So maybe I can have, this is like for later on. I can just make a function that takes in a list and then maps it to a different, to this format. But I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna grab this. So I have my data here. And I'm going to map it. So my API articles are going to be my new set of data. And let's see. Let's try returning. I need to remember if returning this API articles would work or not. So articles equals this. Articles. And I'm aware I'm 4 minutes over, but this will end in a sec.
Should
Okay.
be let articles there.
Thank you. I will remember that one day. Okay, so we're grabbing that. Getting an error here. Okay. I think it's because I don't have anything in here. Just gonna create a piece of state. Section articles, state, and I'm gonna just define it with an empty list. And then here I can say set. How did I create this? This is wrong. So square brackets, section articles, and then set section articles. Okay. Then I go. When my use effect gets called, I'm going to say set section articles. and then I'm gonna send in my articles. So there's a possibility that this might give weird behavior, but we shall check. I still didn't. Okay, send in anything. So section articles. Okay. Now, please work. Okay. Let's see. Articles.map is not a function. Let me try just refreshing in case this was stale. It is not. So online.
I think articles is still
It's
a
not setting, right?
promise. Still a
Yeah.
promise.
Yeah, it's not setting because this is an async function. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so this does not work. I wanted to test it out in front of you guys because you might do this where you want to return the stuff and then use it in the use effect. I need to find the more elegant way of doing this, but for now, I'm just going to set my section. Yeah, my section articles. I'm going to remove that. So basically, I'm going to set my state inside of this function call and not have to deal with it outside. So in my use effect is just going to call this function that sets the section articles or like gets them from the API and then sets them down here. Now, this is an undefined section. So wait, let me go to comments. Ask. Okay. Awesome. We're getting stuff. I don't know if this is the correct list though. It is not. Okay. Let's see what is happening here. So I'm sending in section articles.
Do you
We are
wanna
sending
do you wanna
them.
call the function when you send it in
Where is it?
at the very bottom? In articles because it's expecting, yeah.
No, section articles is supposed to be state. Section articles. So I think on first render, it hasn't been updated yet. So, oh, API art, okay. So do you see here what I'm doing? I'm grabbing the data that was sent to me through the API, and I'm putting it into an API articles variable, but I'm actually setting the state equal to the articles that I grabbed from my previous context. So I don't need that anymore. So I'm going to comment that out. I'm going to comment this out. Okay. API articles. So now I'm actually setting the section articles to be the articles that I had just grabbed from my API call. And now it's working. Okay. So if I switch to show, does not update.
Would you have to change the use effect? So like whenever you change it, instead of a blank,
I think so, because section page is the same one. So what would I have to put in here?
The
Section
state
tag.
variable.
So whenever my tag that I'm getting from the parameter changes, which is how we know that our page has changed, that is when I want to grab when I want to refresh the articles. So if I refresh, I go to ask HN, I go to show. Now they're updating. I think these are the only ones that I have. And yeah, questions?
I had a quick one. Could you go over the params real quick? I looked away when that was being explained the first time.
This one?
Yeah, no, in the async func, like how you put the params
Oh, this.
into the get request.
Yeah, so these parameters, it's a little easier to just use it as an object because you can like have actual variables and stuff like that in here. So us using this params object to send in to our Axios request is replacing us having to do the manual way. So putting a question mark and then saying tags equals whatever our section tag is going to equal. And then we want to go onto our next one, then we would have to say hits per page equals whatever we want it to be, so 50. So this one, if you have a lot of parameters, it ends up being a very, very long string and you have to do a lot of string interpolation. So this is an easier way to just send all of your parameters in just by putting comma and then putting it inside of an object.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Of course.
Could I see real quick the final return statement at the bottom of this page?
Awesome.
Okay. Oh, I see. Thank you.
Okay. I think that is it. I think we should stop here. One last thing I wanted to mention is the dates. I have an example in the curriculum actually. Let me go here. So if you look at the curriculum, I just have a few examples in here. So this is the way to use the parameters. This one gets stories before a certain date. So you put together your date, you then have something called numeric filters, and you specify what attribute you want to filter by. So these attributes you'll find here in the docs. So numeric filters, you have created at, you have points, and you have number of comments, and you can do operation like the conditional, like less than or equal to, stuff like that. So if you want to look for something created at less than like today's date or maybe 24 hours ago, this was again the date of now divided by 1,000, which turns it into seconds, and then I'm subtracting 24 hours worth of seconds. I know I could have just done like divided by, but this was, yeah. Figured this is easier to see. Yeah, like fetch article by ID, you can just specify the ID like this. By section, we just saw that we changed the tag. And yeah, so for today's assignment, we are just continuing working on this. So make sure that you understand how UseEffect is working, try to work on making the search working as well, and maybe have the search do API calls. And yeah, you should have enough docs and stuff like that. Also, the actual API docs are going to be your go-to to look at. Any questions?